For 2 years, my in-laws treated me like a maid in their family business. "You're lucky we gave you a job," they sneered. But at the shareholders' meeting, their faces turned white. I wasn't their employee. I was their boss and had been all along. My name is Elizabeth Carter, and for 2 years, I lived a double life that would have made any spy proud. To my in-laws, I was just their son's disappointing wife who worked as a low-level accountant in their precious family business. But in reality, I was the majority shareholder of Carter Industries, watching and waiting as they dug their own grave. It all started when I met Michael Carter at a charity gala. He was charming, seemingly kind, and came from what everyone called old money. His family's company, Carter Industries, was a leading manufacturer of medical devices, built by his grandfather from the ground up. What Michael didn't know was that I was there representing my own family's investment firm, evaluating Carter Industries for potential acquisition. Our whirlwind romance surprised everyone, including me. Within 6 months, we were engaged, and that's when I met his family properly. Margaret Carter, my mother-in-law, took one look at my simple dress and comfortable shoes and decided I wasn't good enough for her son. "Michael, darling," she'd said during our first dinner together, "are you sure about this? There are so many suitable girls from our circle." Robert Carter, my father-in-law, was more direct. "What exactly does your family do, Elizabeth?" "Investment management," I replied truthfully, though I left out the part about our firm controlling billions in assets. "Small-time financial planning, I assume?" He smirked. "Well, at least you understand basic numbers. Perhaps we can find you a position at the company. Something entry-level, of course." I could have corrected their assumptions. Could have mentioned that my family's firm, Mitchell & Associates, was actually their company's largest potential investor. But something in their condescending tones made me pause. Instead, I smiled and played the role they had cast me in, the modest, grateful girl who had somehow caught their son's eye. Michael, to his credit, seemed embarrassed by his parents' behavior. "Lizzie's brilliant with numbers," he defended. "She'd be an asset to the company." "We'll see," Margaret sniffed. "Though I doubt she understands the complexities of our business." The wedding was lavish. The Carters wouldn't have it any other way. Throughout the planning, Margaret reminded me daily that I was marrying above my station. I endured it all, even as my family watched with increasing concern. "Are you sure about this, Elizabeth?" my father asked the night before the wedding. "You don't have to play this role." "I'm sure, Dad," I replied. "There's something wrong at Carter Industries. The numbers in their public filings don't add up. I need to see what's happening from the inside." He nodded understanding. As the CEO of Mitchell & Associates, he had taught me to trust my instincts about both numbers and people. After the honeymoon, Robert Carter made good on his promise of an entry-level position. I was assigned to the accounting department, processing vendor payments and doing basic bookkeeping. It was several levels below my actual qualifications, but it gave me exactly what I needed, access to the company's financial records. Meanwhile, my father proceeded with our planned acquisition of Carter Industries stock, using various shell companies and investment vehicles to avoid detection. By the time I started work at the company, Mitchell & Associates controlled 48% of the shares. We just needed to understand what was happening inside before making our final move. It didn't take long to see the problems. Margaret and Robert treated the company like their personal piggy bank, funneling money into consulting firms owned by their friends and family. They awarded contracts based on social connections rather than merit, and their financial controls were laughably weak. But what they lacked in business acumen, they made up for in cruelty. "Elizabeth," Margaret would bark whenever she visited the accounting department. "My coffee's cold. Get me a fresh one. I'm actually in the middle of reconciling these accounts." I'd begin. "Don't be difficult, dear. You should be grateful we gave you any position at all." Michael, now fully under his mother's influence, stopped defending me. "Just do what she asks, Lizzie. You know how Mother gets." So I played my part. I fetched coffee, endured their insults, and carefully documented every questionable transaction I found. The Carters had no idea that every night I sent detailed reports to my father's team of forensic accountants. The vendor payments to Rosewood Consulting. I told my father during one of our secret meetings. They're charging 10 times market rate for basic services. And guess who owns Rosewood? Margaret's sister. The evidence of mismanagement and self-dealing mounted. But the final straw came during the company's annual charity gala. I was assigned to work the registration desk. Since you're so good with simple numbers, Margaret had sneered. That evening, I overheard Robert talking to Michael in what they thought was a private corner. The FDA inspection is coming up, Robert said urgently. We need to move those defective units offshore before they arrive. But Dad, those devices could malfunction. People could get hurt. People get hurt every day. What matters is protecting the family legacy. Your wife's salary depends on it too, remember? I felt sick. They weren't just mismanaging the company. They were knowingly shipping defective medical devices. This had to end. That night, I called my father. It's time, I said. Buy whatever shares you can get. I want control before the next shareholders meeting. 2 weeks later, Mitchell and Associates owned 51% of Carter Industries. I had the evidence of their mismanagement, the proof of their attempts to hide defective products, and most importantly, I had the power to stop them. The annual shareholders meeting was in 3 days. The Carters had no idea that their world was about to turn upside down, and their servant daughter-in-law would be the one holding the reins. The morning of the shareholders meeting, I arrived at work exactly as I had for the past 2 years, early, dressed modestly, and carrying Margaret's preferred coffee order. The only difference was the briefcase I carried, containing documents that would change everything. Elizabeth. Margaret's voice rang across the lobby. Why aren't you at the registration desk? The shareholders will be arriving soon. I smiled politely. Actually, I won't be handling registration today. I have a different role in the meeting. She narrowed her eyes. What are you talking about? Don't be ridiculous. Get to your post. Mother's right, Michael said, appearing beside her. You know your place, Lizzie. Those words, your place, had been thrown at me countless times over the past 2 years. Today, they would learn exactly what my place was. I'll be sitting at the main table, I said calmly, as the representative of Mitchell and Associates. For a moment, there was silence. Then Margaret laughed, a harsh, cutting sound. Don't be absurd. You work in basic accounting. Stop making up stories and do your job. Robert approached, his face darkening. Is there a problem here? Your daughter-in-law is having delusions of grandeur, Margaret informed him. She thinks she's representing some investment firm at the meeting. Robert turned to me, his expression dangerous. Elizabeth, you're embarrassing yourself and this family. Get to the registration desk now, or clear out your desk entirely. Actually, Mr. Carter, a new voice joined the conversation. She'll be doing neither. My father walked through the lobby doors, flanked by our company's legal team. The color drained from Robert's face as recognition dawned. James Mitchell? What are you doing here? Supporting my daughter, of course. My father smiled. And protecting our company's investment. Investment? Michael echoed, looking bewildered. What investment? I opened my briefcase and withdrew a folder. Mitchell and Associates owns 51% of Carter Industries shares. We completed the final acquisition last week. Margaret grabbed the folder, her hands shaking as she read. This can't be legal. You're lying. Every transaction is properly documented, I said. Unlike, say, the payments to Rosewood Consulting, or the offshore accounts holding your defective inventory. Robert's face went from white to purple. You little spy. You've been going through our private records. I've been doing my job, I corrected him, both as an employee and as a major shareholder. Speaking of which, shall we head to the meeting? I believe we have some serious matters to discuss. The shareholders' meeting was set in the company's largest conference room. I took my seat at the main table, watching as other shareholders filed in. Many were old friends of the Carters, and they looked confused to see me seated in a position of authority. Robert tried one last desperate move. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid there's been a mistake. This meeting will need to be rescheduled dash. The meeting will proceed as planned, my father interrupted. Though the agenda has been modified. I stood up, enjoying the look of shock on Margaret's face as I took control of the meeting. Good morning, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Elizabeth Carter, representing Mitchell and Associates, the majority shareholder of Carter Industries. The room erupted in whispers. Michael stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. Over the past 2 years, I continued, I've discovered numerous instances of mismanagement and potential fraud within this company. Today, we'll be reviewing these findings and voting on some significant changes to leadership. You can't do this, Margaret shrieked. This is our company. Not anymore, I replied calmly. And based on the evidence I'm about to present, it hasn't been run as your company for quite some time. It's been treated as your personal ATM, with complete disregard for shareholders, employees, and most disturbingly, patient safety. I projected the first slide of my presentation, a detailed breakdown of the irregular payments to Rosewood Consulting and other shell companies owned by Carter family members. This is just the beginning, I announced to the stunned room. We haven't even gotten to the FDA compliance issues yet. For the next 2 hours, I methodically presented evidence of every questionable decision, every misappropriated fund, and every safety violation. The other shareholders' expressions changed from confusion to anger as they realized how their investment had been mishandled. Michael stood up halfway through. Lizzie, why are you doing this? We're family. I turned to face my husband. Family? Your family treated me like a servant. They belittled me, dismissed me, and worst of all, they put profits above people's lives. That's not family, that's organized crime. When I revealed the documentation about the defective medical devices, several shareholders gasped. One longtime family friend stood up and walked out, already calling his lawyer. In light of these findings, I concluded, I moved to remove the current board of directors and establish new leadership focused on ethical business practices and proper corporate governance. The vote wasn't even close. The Carters watched in horror as their empire crumbled, one raised hand at a time. As security began clearing out Robert's office, Margaret approached me, tears streaming down her face. How could you do this to us? After we gave you everything. I looked at her calmly. You gave me nothing. Everything I have, I earned, including the right to stop you from hurting more people. The day wasn't over yet. There were still materials to be turned over to the FDA, employees to reassure, and a company to rebuild. But as I watched the Carters being escorted from the building, I knew the hardest part was behind me. Or so I thought, until Michael stepped into my new office later that afternoon, his face a mask of confusion and betrayal. We need to talk, he said, closing the door behind him. Michael stood in my new office, looking lost in the space his father had occupied just hours before. Was any of it real? He asked. Our marriage? Did you ever actually love me? I considered the question carefully. When we first met, yes. I was genuinely attracted to you, Michael. But watching you stand by while your parents treated me like dirt, that killed whatever love might have grown. He sank into a chair. They were wrong about you. We all were. Yes, you were, I agreed. But being wrong wasn't the real problem. The problem was how easily you accepted their cruelty because it benefited you. Did you ever once stop to think about the people being hurt by those defective devices? I tried to say something about that, he protested weakly. You tried once, then dropped it as soon as your father mentioned money. I leaned forward. That's why you're not just losing your position here. You're losing me too. His head snapped up. What? I pulled out another folder. Divorce papers. My lawyer drew them up last week. Lizzie, please, he begged. I can change. Now that I see who you really are, dash. That's exactly the problem. I cut him off. You only see my worth now that I have power. That's not love, Michael. That's opportunism. As security arrived to escort him out, he turned back one last time. You played us all perfectly, didn't you? No, Michael. You played yourselves. I just paid attention. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The FDA launched a full investigation into the defective devices, leading to a massive recall. I appointed new board members, restructured the management team, and implemented strict ethical guidelines. Margaret tried to wage a social media war against me, painting herself as the victim of a calculating gold digger. It backfired spectacularly when former employees came forward with their own stories of abuse and misconduct under the Carters' leadership. Robert attempted legal action, claiming I had breached my fiduciary duty by spying on the company. His case fell apart when his own documents proved he had given me access to everything I'd discovered. One morning, about a month after the takeover, my father visited my office. "The stock price is up 30% since the announcement of new management," he noted, looking at my latest report. "You've handled this beautifully." "I learned from the best," I smiled. "Though I doubt you meant for me to learn by marrying into a corrupt family." He chuckled. "Sometimes the best lessons come from unexpected places." "Speaking of which, have you heard the latest about the Carters?" "Do I want to know?" "Margaret's sister is suing them over the Rosewood Consulting scandal. Apparently, they weren't even paying her the full amount they were embezzling in her name." I shook my head. "Honor among thieves? Something like that." He paused. "Any regrets?" I looked out my office window at the company I now controlled. Workers were going about their jobs without fear, quality control was actually controlling quality, and patients could trust the devices we produced. "Just one," I said finally. "I wish I'd done it sooner." The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Michael didn't contest it. He was too busy dealing with criminal charges related to the FDA violations. I kept my married name, though. After all, I had earned it. 1 year after the takeover, I stood addressing the employees at our annual meeting. The company had just been named one of the most ethical businesses in the medical device industry. "Some of you knew me when I worked in accounting," I began. "You saw how the previous management treated their employees, their shareholders, and their responsibilities. Those days are over." I looked out at the faces watching me, faces that now showed respect rather than pity or contempt. Carter Industries was built on the idea of helping people live better, healthier lives. Somewhere along the way, that mission was lost to greed and corruption. Today, we're back on track, putting patients first and profit second. After the meeting, my assistant handed me a letter. It was from Margaret, postmarked from the small town where she and Robert had retreated after their disgrace. "You must be very proud of yourself," she wrote. "You've stolen everything we spent generations building." I wrote a single line in response. "No, Margaret. I saved everything you were destroying." The letter joined my collection of Carter family memorabilia, the documentation of my time as their servant daughter-in-law, the evidence of their crimes, and the newspaper clippings about their downfall. Not as trophies, but as reminders that sometimes justice comes dressed in modest clothes, carrying coffee and keeping quiet. Today, Carter Industries is thriving. We're developing new, innovative devices that actually help people. Our employees are valued, our shareholders are satisfied, and our patients are safe. As for me, I finally claimed the corner office that had once been Robert's. But I kept my old desk from accounting, placing it near the window as a reminder. Every morning, I look at it and smile, remembering Margaret's words. "You should be grateful we gave you a job." She was right about one thing. I am grateful. Grateful that they underestimated me so completely that they never saw me coming. Grateful that their arrogance gave me the perfect cover to expose their crimes. And most of all, grateful that I could turn their corrupt empire into something worthy of its original purpose. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just about winning. It's about fixing what your enemies broke. And that's exactly what I did.